What happens when science crosses the line and turns the human body into a living experiment? From sleep deprivation to full-body freezing, these real-life experiments tested the limits of what it means to be human, and some subjects never fully recovered. Science has always pushed boundaries, but sometimes those boundaries blur into terrifying gray areas. Throughout history, doctors, scientists, and even military operatives have subjected humans to bizarre, painful, and downright horrifying experiments, all in the name of knowledge, power, or sheer curiosity. These weren't simulations. These were real people, real bodies, and real consequences. Some volunteers knew what they signed up for. Others didn't. Today, we're diving deep into the darkest corners of scientific history to explore how far the human body can really go, and where we should have drawn the line. From mind control tests to full-body endurance trials, this isn't your average science lesson. This is the terrifying truth behind experiments that defied ethics and shattered limits. Buckle up, because what you're about to hear may be difficult to believe, but every single one of these cases actually happened. In the eerie aftermath of World War II, rumors swirled about a secret Soviet experiment to eliminate the need for sleep. 5 political prisoners were sealed inside a gas chamber with a stimulant designed to keep them awake for 30 consecutive days. Cameras and microphones captured everything. For the first 5 days, the subjects were calm. By day 10, things took a dark turn. Screaming, paranoia, violent behavior. Then silence. When the chamber was finally opened, what was found inside shocked the researchers. Mutilated bodies, self-inflicted wounds, and deranged survivors who begged to stay awake. Now here's the twist. Many historians believe this was pure fiction, born from a creepypasta story that spiraled out of control. But some say the tale's eerily specific details and timing line up suspiciously well with known Soviet experiments. Whether real or not, it touches on a chilling truth. Sleep deprivation is a powerful weapon. In real-life studies, just 72 hours without sleep can trigger hallucinations, paranoia, and complete cognitive breakdown. And while the Russian sleep experiment may be a myth, the dangers of sleep deprivation are horrifyingly real. During World War II, Nazi doctors conducted brutal experiments to test how long the human body could survive in freezing conditions, under the excuse of helping German pilots shot down over the North Sea. Prisoners at Dachau were stripped naked, immersed in ice water, and left to freeze. Scientists observed their heart rates, body temperature, and reactions as their organs slowly shut down. Some subjects died from cardiac arrest, others suffered permanent damage from repeated exposure. Methods of rewarming were also tested, some as disturbing as body-to-body heat using naked women or immersion in boiling water. The results were meticulously documented and, horrifyingly, still referenced today in hypothermia research. But at what cost? These experiments were involuntary, cruel, and lethal. They serve as a grotesque reminder of how medical science was weaponized. And while modern researchers have learned from these atrocities, the ethical scars remain deep. Could a human body survive extreme cold like that? Technically, yes, but only for minutes. Beyond that, the body enters shock, organs fail, and death is almost certain. Imagine waking up with no memory of what happened for the last 48 hours and realizing you were part of a government mind control experiment. That was the reality for countless Americans caught in Project MKUltra, a covert CIA operation in the 1950s and 60s. Its goal? To develop techniques for controlling the human mind. Test subjects, often unaware, were given LSD, sensory deprivation, sleep therapy, and hypnosis. Some were mentally ill. Others were simply civilians in the wrong place at the wrong time. In one infamous case, a scientist named Frank Olson was unknowingly dosed with LSD. Days later, he fell from a hotel window under suspicious circumstances. Officially ruled a suicide, many now believe he was silenced. MKUltra wasn't about helping anyone. It was about control, about seeing how far the human psyche could be pushed before breaking. Many victims experienced lasting psychological trauma, with some institutionalized for life. It wasn't until the 1970s that MKUltra was exposed, leading to congressional hearings and public outrage. But by then, thousands had already suffered. The human mind is powerful, but tampering with it can turn genius into madness. From 1932 to 1972, 600 black men in Alabama were enrolled in a study by the U.S. Public Health Service. They were told they'd be treated for bad blood, a vague term used in the South. In reality, 399 of them had syphilis and were left untreated on purpose, just so scientists could study the disease's natural progression. Even after penicillin became the standard cure in the 1940s, it was deliberately withheld. The subjects were monitored but never helped. Doctors watched them go blind, insane, and die, all for the sake of data. The worst part? The participants thought they were being cared for. They were given placebos, sham procedures, and false hope. It wasn't until a whistleblower exposed the study in 1972 that the truth came out, shocking the nation and leading to stricter ethical standards in medical research. The Tuskegee study wasn't just unethical, it was inhumane. It treated human lives as disposable, and it left a legacy of mistrust that still echoes today. The human body is resilient, but it should never be used without consent. Between the 1940s and 1970s, U.S. government-funded researchers secretly exposed unsuspecting Americans to radioactive materials. Some subjects were terminally ill patients injected with plutonium. Others were military members, mentally ill patients, or even pregnant women exposed during atomic tests. The goal? To study the long-term effects of radiation on the human body. In one case, researchers secretly fed radioactive oatmeal to children at a school for the mentally disabled. They were told it was for nutrition research. In reality, their bodies were being tracked like lab rats. The results were horrifying: birth defects, cancers, organ failure, and in many cases, death. These experiments weren't accidents. They were intentional, secretive, and covered up for decades. When the truth finally emerged in the 1990s, a presidential advisory committee confirmed over 4,000 radiation experiments had been conducted, many without consent. These weren't supervillain plots. This was real science, twisted by secrecy and power. The human body exposed to radiation can suffer at the cellular level, mutating DNA and unraveling entire systems. And for many test subjects, the price of discovery was paid with their lives. In a remote part of Japanese-occupied China during World War II, a top-secret unit known as Unit 731 carried out some of the most barbaric experiments in human history. Under the guise of medical research, prisoners were subjected to live vivisection, dissected without anesthesia. Others were infected with deadly diseases like the plague, anthrax, and cholera, just to study how the body reacted. Victims were frozen, starved, or locked in pressure chambers until their bodies exploded. Some were burned alive or had limbs amputated and reattached to the opposite side. The goal? To create more effective biological weapons and study the limits of human survival. It's estimated that over 300,000 people died as a result of Unit 731's experiments. But here's the shocking part. After the war, many of the scientists involved were never prosecuted. Instead, the U.S. reportedly struck a deal, offering immunity in exchange for access to the data. To this day, some of that data remains classified. Unit 731 stands as a chilling reminder of how science in the wrong hands becomes a tool of unimaginable horror. The human body can endure a lot, but it should never be used like this. Not all strange experiments are unethical. Some are designed to push the human body to its natural limits, and Navy SEAL Hell Week is one of the most extreme examples. This week-long crucible is part of SEAL training, where candidates endure 5.5 days of constant physical and mental stress. We're talking about carrying boats, running miles with no sleep, freezing in the surf zone, and surviving on less than 4 hours of rest. It's not torture, it's training, but it's as close as it gets. The goal? To test not just strength, but willpower. Less than 25% of candidates make it through. Some hallucinate, others collapse from exhaustion or hypothermia. But those who survive, they prove that the human body and mind can withstand punishment far beyond what most people believe. Hell Week is a controlled, voluntary environment, but it mimics real combat stress, where decisions under pressure can mean life or death. It's not about breaking people. It's about finding those who won't break. And in that brutal environment, we learn just how much the human body can endure when survival is the only option. What happens to the human body and mind when it's locked away from Earth for months or years? To answer this, NASA and other space agencies conduct extreme isolation experiments, simulating life on Mars or the Moon. Volunteers live in confined habitats with no sunlight, limited communication, and artificial air systems. One study in Russia, called Mars 500, lasted 520 days. 6 men were locked in a simulated spacecraft to study the psychological and physical toll of space travel. The results? Sleep disorders, mood swings, vitamin deficiencies, and even mild hallucinations. Another NASA project, HISEAS in Hawaii, tests how people handle interpersonal tension and resource scarcity. And it's not just mental. In zero-gravity simulations, muscles atrophy, bones weaken, and the heart shrinks. These aren't just science fiction scenarios. As we aim for deep space exploration, understanding how the human body handles extreme environments is crucial. Isolation may not leave scars on the skin, but it can deeply affect the mind. The body is adaptable, yes, but extended isolation stretches both flesh and spirit to the breaking point. While past experiments often involved unwilling subjects, today's world brings a new twist. People volunteering to test the human body in radical ways. Biohackers are at the forefront, injecting themselves with experimental gene therapy, implanting chips under their skin, or living with extreme diets to study performance and longevity. One man famously lived for a year as close to a chimpanzee as possible, eating only raw fruits, walking on all fours, and living outdoors. Another went on a liquid-only diet for over 100 days, closely monitored by doctors to study metabolic function. These self-imposed experiments are pushing the boundaries of what we can survive and what we should. Are they scientific pioneers or thrill seekers? Maybe both. But they reflect a powerful curiosity. How far can we go without breaking? Some suffer long-term consequences. Others become internet sensations. And while not as horrifying as the past, these modern tests still walk a fine ethical line. The difference now? Consent. People are choosing to test their bodies like never before, and in doing so, they're revealing just how astonishingly adaptable we really are. So can the human body survive these insane experiments? The answer is, sometimes, but survival often comes at a cost: physical damage, mental trauma, or even the loss of identity. These stories, from frozen prisoners to drugged civilians to sleep-deprived soldiers, show us that the human body is both incredibly fragile and shockingly durable. It can be pushed, manipulated, and tortured, but it can also adapt, heal, and endure. The real question isn't how far we can go. It's whether we should. Ethical lines exist for a reason. Science needs curiosity, yes, but it also needs compassion. Without it, we risk turning ourselves into test subjects in the name of progress. And while we've learned a lot from history's darkest experiments, we've also been reminded again and again that the ends don't always justify the means. As we look to the future, whether it's curing diseases, hacking biology, or colonizing space, we must never forget the human element. Behind every experiment is a person, a heartbeat, a life. And respecting that life is what separates discovery from disaster. If you found this video shocking, eye-opening, or just plain unbelievable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell us in the comments, which experiment shocked you the most? Until next time, stay curious and stay human.